What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'm going to take you guys through the final version of the template team. So don't worry, I know that we've done a template draft a couple of weeks ago, but I wanted to use that for comparison reasons, as now let's see how the template has actually formed over these past couple of weeks. Now I always love looking at the template picks of this season, gives us an insight into the minds of the usual manager, and that's exactly what this draft's going to be about. Now as we're at the end of this video, I want you guys to comment how many of the templates you guys do own. For myself, it's a couple of these, I won't lie, my draft is looking very template, and if you don't know the draft that I'm currently talking about, check out my team selection that I released yesterday. But to start off this video, I'll be giving you guys some talking points about the total amount of managers, as well as should you guys go template or not, and how Maverick is too Maverick before we talk about the actual starting 11 as well as the bench. Now, I hope you guys are getting hyped about this Friday night deadline. Just a reminder that I'll be doing a deadline stream 1 hour before the deadline, so please put your alarms on, put the bell notifications and my Twitter notifications on so you don't miss that stream. With that out the way, let's get straight into this video. Sit back, relax, and let's get right into it. This video has been sponsored by FantasyFootballFix.com. Supercharge your FPL rank. Introducing the Elite XI team reveal from the world's greatest managers, as well as pre-deadline captain data from the FPL's Elite. Boost your rank with the powerful squad optimization, as well as price change predictions throughout the game weeks. Opta stats and player points projections, plus much more. Find out more about the features available and upload your squad for free at FantasyFootballFix.com. So 10 million FPL managers question mark is going to be our first talking point, and what I mean by this is the projected amount of total managers that would have signed up for FPL by Friday night. So an absolutely insane amount of total managers there. The amount of managers increase year on year, and looks like we're going to break the records yet again this season with the new record total managers. But this kind of fits into my first talking point, and the reason I created this video on Tuesday instead of kind of Wednesday or Thursday is that I do think a lot of managers coming in will be more casual, and therefore the template's going to be completely messed up. So I at least want the template to be reflective of some more forward-thinking FPL managers. Now watch that come back to bite me. An absolute casual manager with Kante in their midfield is going to win FPL this year. But I think you guys know what I'm talking about with a kind of more refined template team. So the ownership percentages are coming from Monday evening. That's when I'm recording this video. Unfortunately, due to work constraints, I'm having to pre-record videos, but that's still good enough to me in terms of the timing. But now we're going to switch over to the next talking point, and that's to template or not to template. That is the question after all. And this is something that I think a lot of people have been dealing with throughout this preseason. And the reason for that is that this preseason, unlike many of my prior FPL preseasons, has been pretty template dominant. And like last season where the template was pretty strong, I think this season it's going to be the exact same situation. And what I'm saying by that is just because a pick is template does not mean that they're actually a bad pick. And I think this season the template looks pretty good, and it's probably going to score quite a few points in the opening couple of game weeks. But you guys don't have to worry about that. If you watch my chip strategy video, we do have 3 wildcards this season, so the first one is going to be even earlier than usual for the majority of managers, and therefore come that first wildcard, whenever it is, there's going to be a massive switch up. So that's why my personal kind of strategy this season is I do have a template team, but I've kind of picked that myself. I didn't really look at any of the ownership percentages when making my team, so that's fine by me. But if you guys did go look at your ownership percentages and that's how you picked your team, maybe relook at it, maybe kind of estimate which players you think will score the most points. If it is the exact same team, 100%, but please don't go select your team on ownership percentages. So in my personal opinion, I'm probably the worst manager if you are Maverick, because I'm kind of telling you guys to go template. When you guys have been asking my thoughts on Discord, I've probably said normalize more to the template, but that's just because I think honestly they are the best options. But if you guys did watch my team selection yesterday, I did actually pick 1 or 2 options that might be considered more Maverick, and that's just because I think those options are great assets for the opening couple game weeks. So it seems like my own personal team is kind of very template, but 1 or 2 additions, and that's exactly how I think you guys should play FPL. But let me know in the comments down below, do you guys think that you should be going more Maverick? Do you guys think that this team should be your team going into game week 1? That's the least risky kind of strategy, but at the end of the day, we're all trying to win FPL, but the winner might not be top of the rankings come game week 37. But now let's get on to the actual template team, because that's what you guys are probably be looking forward to, and probably the reason that you guys clicked on this video. So let's get straight into it. So first of all, in terms of the money in the bank, I can actually just afford this team. There will be a little bit of a change in the midfield department, but I will talk to you guys through that of actually how you can afford this side, but you will have to make one change. So yes, you guys can actually pick an entire template team based on the price points and also the ownership percentages. So if you guys want to be super conservative, this will be the team that you go for. But as I mentioned previously, that's not exactly the way I would play FPL. Starting off with the bench position, this is exactly how I would play FPL though, because the bench structure is the exact same as mine. A 4.0 goalkeeper, a 4.5 midfield, a 4.5 forward, and finally the cheapest defender in the game at 4.0 million. Now, in terms of the second goalkeeper, I'm not going to kind of pick anyone here because none of them actually feature. There are some ownership percentages there for you guys. But as I said, I would just pick one random one and probably pick a team that you won't triple up on, or at least you think you won't, in the next couple game weeks. But the next two options on the bench, Andreas Pereira and Neco Williams, are in my own team, and just because these options look like great assets, their ownership is going to be around the 25% mark, which isn't too high, and the reason they've been selected by so many managers is because they are great bench options. So let's start off with Andreas Pereira, starting for Fulham at the current moment in preseason at the cam slot. With an injury to Harry Wilson that looks like it will be for quite a long time, he should actually stay in that formation. So 4.5 midfielder as a cam in a Premier League team is good enough for me, and it's also good enough for about 25% of managers. Now there are some other alternatives at 4.5 million, a De Silva, that sort of thing, but I still do think that Andreas Pereira will start and hopefully get some points if we need him off the bench. So I can honestly say that I agree with Andreas Pereira, also agree with Neco Williams. Now Neco Williams versus Patterson from Everton has been a little bit of an increasing debate over these past couple of days. I still prefer Neco Williams because I think there might be some rotation there, but Patterson does look quite strong. But between Everton and Nottingham Forest, who's going to keep the most clean sheets? At the end of the day, it's probably a 50-50. I think I would side with Everton just because they've been in the Premier League for these past seasons, whereas Nottingham Forest are newly promoted, but they still look like quite a respectable team. So 27.1% for Neco Williams, 100%, but between him and Patterson, it's a real 50-50, so you guys can go with whoever you think is better. And I'll finally go on to the big talking point of the bench for me. It's going to be Greenwood at 25.5%. Now, this is not the Greenwood from Man United, this is the Greenwood from Leeds. And there actually have been some Leeds fans that have been saying that Greenwood might get minutes, especially with these 5 subs. So if you guys don't know, the Premier League this season has 5 substitutes, so managers are going to go rotate heavy, and that's why Greenwood and some of these other 4.5 forwards might actually find their way on the pitch. But the big thing for me about this 4.5 and any of the other midfielders that you guys see and defenders that are cheap and have high ownership is please be careful of price drops. What I'm saying by this is that there's a good chance that maybe the casual managers come in here, they select Greenwood because he's a high ownership, they think he's going to start every single game, score loads of goals, but then once he starts not playing and getting 0 points, they might actually transfer him out. And then what happens, he goes from 4.5 to 4.4 to 4.3, and then when you guys do use your first wildcard or a free hit or a chip like that, your team value is going to be reduced. Now this might happen, it might not. I'm just putting it out there for you guys. So I would suggest if it is going to be an option at 4.5 that'll be third on your bench, I would just go for a low ownership one because chances are they're not going to play anyways and you won't need them off your bench at that third position. Now in terms of other options, I personally have Archer from Aston Villa. Looks like he's a pretty strong selection. Stevie G likes that 2 striker formation and therefore Archer might actually get some minutes late into the fixture. So that's just my 2 cents, but you guys can take that, leave it. But I do actually like Andreas Pereira and Neco Williams. So even though the ownership's quite high and they might drop in price, because they play and might get points, I'm fine with that. But now going to the starting 11, and we're going to start with the goalkeeper. And right off the bat, guys, the goalkeeper position is probably the least template of all of them. There's a very close percentage between them. And Edouard Mendy only comes in at 22.2%. This is a slight drop from the last template video, and we have actually seen Alisson increase in ownership, so he kind of rivals him around those high 10 percentages. But as I said, the ownership between the goalkeepers is pretty split, but Edouard Mendy is the current highest owned goalkeeper. Now, Edouard Mendy is a player that's kind of grown on me throughout the preseason, and the reason for that is that he is a kind of set slot into that Chelsea defense at 5.0 million. Now, yes, his points per game last season weren't too great, but will kind of Chelsea improve? Will they not improve? Will he get more saves? That's the big question mark there, but I personally prefer going for maybe someone like a Ramsdale at that same price point. So I don't really like this pick from a Chelsea defensive point of view. I think a Reece James, a Chol when he's back to full fitness are much better selections because of that attacking threat. But there has been some rumors about Chelsea signing some other defenders, so they might actually be better options. But the goalkeeper hopefully won't be too important to your position, and I mean the price points between a 4.5 and a 5.5 isn't that great, but FPL have given us an opportunity to own these assets at the reduced prices from last season. Talking about reduced prices from last season, a player that stayed consistent but probably should have got a price rise is going to be Trent Alexander-Arnold at 56.9%. Now I'll be going from left to right in terms of most owned to least owned in terms of this formation, so just watch out for that. But Trent at 7.5 for me is an essential option, and it's nice to see that just under the 57% mark agree with me. I just think from a Liverpool point of view, the fixtures look great, Trent's a great FPL asset, and definitely the best defender to own in the game. Now you guys can downgrade him to Robertson, who's less owned, but I wouldn't suggest doing that, as with that high ownership, that could come back to bite you. We've seen in the last preseason games, Trent is looking red hot, Liverpool looking quite strong, and that's why he's one of my more essential picks. Like Trent, I do like the Man City defense, and that's why Cancelo at 45%. And the interesting thing about Cancelo is that he stayed consistent. 45% in the last template video, 45% today's video, and that's just him. The C in Cancelo stands for consistency, and hopefully he's going to be a consistent option in my FPL team this season. I think based on this, you guys have to have some Liverpool coverage, and you have to have some Man City coverage, as his ownership stats are quite high, and I think they'll get you points at the end of the day. A play that has the potential as well to get you points is going to be Reece James at just under 40%, 39.8% of favouring the Chelsea wingback, and you guys can understand why. With Shaw out injured potentially, doesn't look like he's getting fitness over preseason, Reece James is definitely the entry I would go for in that Chelsea defence, and if he does start the season quite hot, he even might be a captaincy consideration. So you guys can see that I do like TCJ in terms of that back three. I do like these three assets. I'm trying to get all of them in my team, but currently I'm going without Reece James. A player that's been a little bit divided and had his ownership quite cut is going to be Perisic, and the reason for this is that in preseason he's actually started the later games, so I guess he can be considered match fit, but right now I do worry about those Spurs fullbacks because of all that rotation. They have so many options. Yes, Perisic should be first choice, yes, Doherty should be first choice theoretically, but who kind of knows with Perisic, there might be still some rotation under Conte. It does still worry me though that about 30% of managers do own Perisic, because if he does start, a massive threat to go for, and arguably probably one of the best FPL assets to actually own. So let's maybe see what Conte says in the press conferences before this fixture, because if it is anything positive, I think I might actually have to go for the Croatian. So in terms of the defense, pretty strong, pretty stacked, pretty premium, and all of these assets, if they do play, I think can get you some massive points. Going to the midfield department, those massive points potential continues with Mo Salah at just under 59%. Now, Mo Salah is not actually the highest owned player in the game. He is the highest owned Liverpool asset though, and I almost consider him essential. Now, I know my Discord channel does not agree with me. Lots of you guys are going no Salah or hashtag no Salah. I'm a hashtag Mo Salah, and that's why the Egyptian is going to be in my starting 11 and probably my captain. But nothing much more has to be said about Salah. He's been in every one of my drafts. I've spoken about him to the end, so let's move on to the next asset. Now, we are escaping Mo Salah, we're not escaping Liverpool. It's going to be Luis Diaz at just under 25%. Now, what you guys can kind of gauge from this is because Robertson wasn't in the selection, he was owned by about 10 to 20% of managers. I do think the Liverpool triple up is still going to be pretty differential at the end of the day. Also take into account that people going no Salah probably have Luis Diaz, and the double up or triple up might actually be a nice little differential to go for in game week 1. So that's why I suggested. I don't necessarily suggest going for Luis Diaz, I prefer Robertson, but I do think at 8.0 million, if you guys don't have the Liverpool triple up and have that midfielder slot, I would go with the Colombian. I just think points potential Liverpool side of things, the fixtures look great. It's a great team, they score a lot of goals. I would like Luis Diaz to improve his shooting, but if he does, he's going to be one of the best assets to own in the game. But he's a pretty no-brainer pick. If you guys don't own the Liverpool triple up, go for him. But if you don't, I might consider going for Robertson instead. Now we're going to move on to the player that you might have to transfer out if you want to afford this draft. It's going to be none other than Saka from Arsenal. So at 8.0 million, I do like him at his price point. I do prefer Gabriel Jesus, who we'll talk about later on. But Saka could be a nice differential at just over 20%. Now, the whole penalty situation is a little bit unknown at Arsenal at the current moment. Saka looked like the predominant one last season, but he did not take a penalty in the final game week, and therefore that's tossed some confusion up in the air. But let's just say Saka is on penalties. I really do favour him. I think that Arsenal lineup could win a few, and that's why if he is on penalties, I like him. But if he's not, still a great asset, but might not be the best Arsenal option. But here's where you guys can change him out if you want to afford this draft. You guys can also go for Martinelli at 16.6% ownership. It's a little bit more differential, but he also comes in quite cheaper at minus 2 million. So in order to afford this draft, just downgrade Saka to Martinelli. Boom, you've got your template FC, and you can head into game week 1 pretty confident. But I do like Saka. If you guys have an 8 million slot, I'm not going to go for Luis Diaz. I actually prefer Saka or maybe a Mason Mount like yesterday's video. But let's just see how the season goes on, because that start is going to be quite an important one. Another important asset to cover is going to be Pedro Neto at just under 20%. Has dipped in ownership, which is a little bit surprising considering his preseason form. But maybe some managers are worried about that Raul Jimenez injury, and how that's going to affect Pedro Neto's output. But I still have the 5.5 Portuguese international. I do really like him. I think that Wolves will rebound this season, have the fixture to do it in the opening couple game weeks. And that's why at 5.5 million, no brainer for me. And the risk isn't too much at that price point. Definitely on the FPL Twitter kind of template, Pedro Neto is going to be in everyone's team. But there is a little bit of an alternative now with Bailey from Aston Villa. So Bailey comes in 0.5 less expensive, is more differential. But I still do prefer Pedro Neto because of that consistency. And he has actually shown in the Prem that he can do it. Talking about kind of proving it in the Prem, we're going to go on to our forward line. The first option is going to be Haaland at 50%. So it is quite interesting for me to see that 50% of managers own Haaland right on the dot. I promise you, I did not kind of round off anything like that. It was bang on the money, 50% on the FPL website. So it seems like Haaland's kind of a 50-50 decision. It's not between him and Kane though, because Kane is 25% owned. So Kane is definitely more differential, and that's the personal option I'm going for. But when you guys see that Haaland plays Bournemouth in game week 2, that might turn your head. Now, we did see in the Community Shield him looking a little bit rusty, kind of missed his sitter towards the end of the fixture, but it was nice to see him getting a lot of minutes. I think that's the biggest concern with Haaland is the minutes. Will Pep kind of rotate him? Will Pep play him every single game? Who kind of knows? And I do slightly worry about Alvarez in the window. But I do think come game week 2, if Man City looks strong, if Erling Haaland scores in game week 1 against West Ham, we all will be on him and captaining him, and that's why you guys need a route to own him. But as I said, I'm personally on Kane, but you guys can also go for the more highly owned Haaland at 50%. But the final player to talk about, and I've kind of disregarded the left to right here, most highest owned to least owned, because this player I want to talk about, it's actually Gabriel Jesus at a massive, gigantic 70.4%. Now, I actually don't even know if this is the most highly owned player in FPL's history. I think Mo Salah might have rivaled him a couple of seasons ago, but for a new option in a new team, 70% is absolutely insane and just shows you how good the Jesus price point was, but also his preseason form. Added to that, the flexibility of having two strikers instead of kind of going for a big five in the midfield or the defensive department. I actually think Gabriel Jesus is one of the best assets to own in the game, and with that ownership, I would almost consider essential. Now, I would be kind of split on him, but the thing about his preseason is that he scored so many goals, got so many attacking returns, and Arsenal look quite strong, and that's with that nice Arsenal run of fixtures in the opening couple games, I'd definitely be going for the Brazilian forward. So I think going without Salah is one thing, but going without Jesus is another at 70%, I guess because most people won't captain him, might not be that detrimental to your rank, but I would heavily consider going with some of these essential options with their ownerships being so high. But this is basically up to the template draft, guys. Let me know what you guys think of it in the comments down below. Is this anyone's actual starting 11? Do you guys own most of these players? As I think this team actually looks quite good. Now, to wrap up this video, I want you guys to comment down below how many template players do you guys own. I think I'm on about 7 or 8. I'm saying that a little bit unshamefully, as I do think the template's looking quite strong this season. There are some positions that I've gone more differential, and you guys can go check that out on my team selection yesterday. But also comment down below how many options you have and what the current draft's looking like. But this is basically wrap up the video, guys. Hope you did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like if you did and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. I'll be seeing you guys for loads of content coming up, including the deadline stream 1 hour before the deadline on Friday. So make sure those bar notifications are on so you don't miss out on any of the fun. But I'm signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL and I'm out. Cheers. Bye.